Hey everyone, I'm Samurai Sam. Welcome to another episode where I'm looking at every single game that I have in my collection. And today we're going to do Game Gear, but I decided to lump in a few other Sega things into this episode because I realized my Game Gear collection isn't that big and I have other Sega consoles that I don't have big collections for, so let's just lump it all in one video. And let's start out with a little bonus because since I made my Genesis video, I've gotten a few Genesis imports in the mail, so here's actually some bonus Genesis. We have Ball Jacks from Europe. This is a game that is kind of versus focused, I guess you could say. It looks kind of like Pong-ish, but instead of like getting a ball into the other player's goal, from what I understand, I think you have to grab balls that are behind the other player and drag them to your side or something like that. Seems like a pretty cool game that would be fun to play with two players. And this game is completely region-free. It will play in your American Genesis with no problems. We have Jimmy White's Whirlwind Snooker for Mega Drive, or Snooker, I guess. And this is a snooker game. Now, snooker is a word that probably sounds very foreign to Americans. It's because it's some kind of variant of pool that with rules that like we don't use in America for our pool games, I guess. I haven't like really learned how to play it yet, but this port, I think this is like a port of like a PC version or something like that. But it seems like it's a very well done version with impressive graphics and interface and all that and deep gameplay. I'm gonna have to like learn how to play snooker at some point. And then we have Langrisser 2 for the Japanese Mega Drive, and this is a sequel to the game we got here known as War Song, strategy RPG. Good music by Motoi Sakuraba, and they really advanced the gameplay in many ways with the sequel. And we're going to get to Langrisser 2 on Super Nintendo as well, which is the one that I played, which that's a full-fledged remake with like a bunch of different stuff. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. So that's it for Genesis, and now let's move on to Game Gear. So the only boxed Game Gear game I have is Crystal Warriors here, which I haven't really played much yet. It is a strategy RPG, as you can see from the back, and I can't really tell you too much else about it other than it has a good reputation. And so at some point I will play that. Now let's open up a drawer here and start grabbing some Game Gear games. Loose cartridges. So, our first Game Gear cartridge is going to be Cool Spot. Not too much to say about Cool Spot. I mean, you probably know what it is. A 7-Up mascot from the 90s. And it's a fairly straightforward platformer. I think it's based on the console versions, but I don't really know. Nothing really that special. We've got Desert Speed Trap, Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, and again, another licensed game. Not like really a spectacular game, but like, you know, does the license justice, I think, from what I can tell. You're probably better off with the Desert Demolition on Genesis if you want a Wile E. Coyote game, though. We've got Aladdin, which again is, you know, a decent licensed game. We've got 3 licensed games in a row so far. And I don't think this one is quite based on either of the console versions, but it seems decent. Just, you know, not too special. It's just, you know, if you liked Aladdin in the 90s, it was probably cool to have that. We have another licensed game. We have Deep Duck Trouble with Donald Duck. And again, it's a platformer. It's a licensed game. I mean, I have too many of these, apparently. Let's see here. Okay, finally something that's not a licensed game. We have Dragon Crystal. And so I actually took a trip to London earlier this year, and that's why you're going to see a few of these with the UK price tags. And what's funny, though, about UK Game Gear games like these is that a lot of them are, from what I can tell, completely indistinguishable from the American releases. Like, the cartridges are exactly the same. There's no region lock, no art difference, no nothing. It's literally the same exact cartridge. They just put a different box in it. This is a roguelike. So if you played like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon or whatever, same genre game. I haven't played it a lot. I haven't owned it for very long, so can't say too much about that one. We have here... Oh, no, we already did that one. What is next? Here we go. Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. This was a game also on Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. I think this version is kind of different. Again, based on a movie, obviously, with Bruce Lee. And it seems alright. Again, another licensed platformer. Came with my system. Some of these games, I bought my Game Gear with a bunch of games from a guy for a really cheap price. That's why I have some of these games that you're probably going to wonder why I have them. Haley Wars, or Haley Wars, I don't know how you pronounce it. Shoot 'em up, seems like a good game. Not too much else to say, but I haven't spent a lot of my gaming life with Game Gear, so I'm not going to have a whole lot to say on a lot of these. Now, this is one I have played, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I've never been the biggest Power Rangers fan, but I did bother to beat this game. It's like a fighting game, and it's surprisingly decent for an 8-bit fighting game. If you like the show, you'll probably really like it. Otherwise, I'd say it's passable. We've got Mortal Kombat 2. Now, if you might remember in the Game Boy episode, I talked about how the Game Boy version of Mortal Kombat 2 was surprisingly decent, and this is basically the Game Boy version with color, so it's better. So this was the best handheld Mortal Kombat 2 back in the day, and probably not really worth playing now, but it is pretty solid considering the Game Gear limitations. We got Ms. Pac-Man, which needs no introduction. It's Pac-Man, and it's done pretty well. If you want a Pac-Man on the go, this was a solid way to do it. And we have NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Now, NBA Jam obviously was originally a 16-bit game, or maybe even a little better in arcades, I don't know. So they had to crunch this down to 8 bits, basically, for this, and it's surprisingly good for an 8-bit NBA Jam. It pretty much keeps the core gameplay intact. Again, it's not really worth it, I would say, now, but pretty impressive considering the hardware limitations. Here is Ninja Gaiden, which is, I forget if this is like the arcade version. I don't think this is the NES version. I think this is more like the arcade version. It might be kind of its own thing. But again, Ninja Gaiden, side-scrolling action. I haven't spent a lot of time with it yet. I haven't had it very long, so I can't say too much. And then we also have Pac-Man, as opposed to Miss Pac-Man. Honestly, I think Miss Pac-Man is better than Pac-Man in general. I'm a little surprised they even released this, considering they already have Miss Pac-Man, or why not just do them both on one card? I can't imagine why they wouldn't have been able to do that. But, it's Pac-Man, though. It plays well. We got Pengo here. This is actually a game that did not get released in America. It only got released in Japan and Europe. And I think this game was on, like, PCs or something like that. And I want to say this is like a top-down action puzzle-ish sort of game, but I've only fired it up, like, once, so I can't really say for 100% certain. We have Poker Face Paul's Blackjack, which is Blackjack, exactly what it says on the label. And yeah, there's about 1,000,001 ways to play Blackjack now. Not really too much reason to have that today, but I suppose people who wanted portable Blackjack got their portable Blackjack with that game. We have Shinobi here, which, again, side-scrolling ninja action, seems solid. And I can't say too much. I haven't spent a lot of time with the Game Gear in general. I got it long after its heyday, so I don't have much of a history myself with the system. Now we're getting into Sonic games. We got Sonic the Hedgehog. This is not the Genesis version. This is like the version that came out for like the Sega Master System, because Game Gear and Master System are basically the same hardware. And it seems alright. It's definitely not as good as in my opinion, the Genesis Sonics, but, you know, it's pretty much pretty much true to what Sonic is, I would say. And Sonic 2, which I think is kind of notorious for being really difficult, and, you know, it seems alright, but, you know, it's not high on my priority list to play. More Sonic coming up here. We got Sonic Chaos, which, I'm trying to remember, there's a lot of Sonic games in the Game Gear, and it's easy for me to get them mixed up, and I want to say this is a new platformer, and I think this is like completely original or something, but I don't think it's particularly good if I remember right. And I actually have another version of Sonic Chaos with a different label, but I don't even think I'll bother to show you that one. Now, this is a game that I have actually beaten, Sonic Triple Trouble, and original Game Gear title, and it's alright. I beat it, and I was like, yeah, that was a game. I moved on. Not really anything super memorable, just, you know, decent Sonic game. I'm sure people hungry for Sonic liked it when they played it, especially the kiddies. We've got Sonic Spinball, which is pretty much a port of the Genesis version. I don't know if it has all the levels or not. Not that there were too many of them to begin with. Seems like an alright port. Seems like it keeps basically the main graphics and gameplay intact, so that's good. We have what is this down here? Oh, darn it! Get out of here! All right. Woody Pop, I believe this is Breakout-ish, Arkanoid-ish kind of clone. And I kind of enjoy those games, so I'm pretty happy to have that. And then this cartridge got buried under the other, so I pull it out. Then we got World Series Baseball, which is baseball. Probably not much reason to play that anymore either. You can tell I'm not the most into Game Gear out of all the gamers in the world. Then X-Men, which is another licensed game. And I played probably a little chunk of this one, and it seemed alright, but not anything I'm too eager to play anytime soon. I might actually clean out myself for a few of these Game Gear games because I don't need to have all of them. So that's Game Gear. Now we're going to move on to over here and look at some Sega CD stuff. I don't have a whole lot for Sega CD either. Here is a good game right here, Final Fight CD. This is like, I think this is like the instruction manual cut to fit a regular jewel case, which is kind of horrifying, but hey. Or actually, it might be folded. Yeah, I think it might be folded. But Final Fight, I mean, probably needs no introduction. It's a beat 'em up from arcades that was really popular in the early 90s by Capcom. And this is one of the best versions of it, honestly. They redid the music, and it sounds really, really good. Great multiplayer game. I believe this version is multiplayer. The Super Nintendo version was not. I'm pretty sure this one is. So, if you like Final Fight, it's a good version to have. Unfortunately, it's a little expensive now, but hey. Lethal Enforcers right here. Konami game, gun game. You use the Justifier gun to play this game and shoot bad guys. Not too much to say about Lethal Enforcers. It's arcadey, shoot the bad guys and don't shoot the good guys kind of game. You've probably seen those before if you've been to an arcade. We've got Soul Feast, which is the Sega CD version of Soul Dees on the Genesis. This is a shoot 'em up, kind of. Trying to think of the best way to, probably best to compare it to Darius, maybe. Arcade shoot 'em up. I haven't played this one a whole lot. Doesn't seem too complicated or unique, but seems all right. And then we have, we're getting into long box games now. There's a few games here I might get rid of. Like here we have Dark Wizard. It's a strategy game. It has a good reputation, but like looking at gameplay footage of this game, I'm thinking, I mean, it's all right, but like I'd probably enjoy it. But am I really going to spend all the time on this game? I'm probably not. So I might get rid of this one. I'm sure someone else will get a lot more mileage out of it than I would. We have Pugsy here, which is a platformer. This was also on the Genesis, by the way. This is a platformer that involves picking up and throwing things and stuff. And it seems alright, but probably not something that I'm actually going to realistically spend time with, so I might get rid of that one too. And we also have Silpede, which is a shoot-'em-up with kind of graphics that at the time looked kind of futuristic-y and cool. And again, seems like alright, but probably not anything that would be all that special in my eyes. So now we have games that I do actually plan to keep. Here's Eternal Champions. This is a 2D fighter. We already saw this on the Genesis a little bit. One of those mini games that try to capitalize on the popularity of stuff like Street Fighter back in the day. This one actually seems to be pretty solid. And the Sega CD version, unlike the Genesis version, has a lot of blood and gore and like finishing moves, which is kind of neat. So this is the version of the game to have. And I look forward to, at some point, playing this with someone who enjoys 2D fighters. We have Jeopardy, which is that? Yeah, I think that is Alex Trebek on the front, but I think I played this with a friend of mine who really likes Jeopardy games, and she said the voice in the game is actually not Alex Trebek, even though it kind of sounds like him. But yeah, I mean, this was probably really impressive back in the day because the graphics and the audio from the CD made the game show seem a lot more like the real thing. And so yeah, it seems like a pretty solid version of the game show. Probably not the best version today, but for what it is, it's respectable. Here's Lethal Enforcers 2, which somebody weirdly cut out from, it looks like, from the manual and like put it in a DVD case. But yeah, more Lethal Enforcers. Shoot the bad guys with your Justifier gun. Hopefully you have a friend with you to play. We have one of the most famous Sega CD games. We've got Lunar Eternal Blue, RPG by Working Designs. I have played the Lunar games on PlayStation, which are quite different remakes from these. Not super different, but like different enough. Plenty of things changed. And so at some point I do want to play these originals just to see how these games were in their original form. But yeah, Working Designs was a company that definitely had their own kind of touch and flair with their localizations they did in the 90s. They brought over a lot of games that we probably wouldn't have had otherwise. They're no longer in business, which is unfortunate. But Lunar was probably their most successful game overall. And then we have Lunar Eternal Blue, which is the sequel. I like Lunar 2 on the PlayStation more than the first one. It's one of my favorite PlayStation RPGs, and so I do want to play this version at some point. I just don't know when that's going to be exactly, but yeah, happy to have those. I got those for a good deal from my local game store. We have NBA Jam, which is a very good version of NBA Jam with excellent music. And the downside to this version is that there's loading times, so if loading times bother you a lot, then you might be better off with like the Genesis version or some version of the arcade version if you can grab that, or maybe you'd prefer the newer NBA Jam, but it's still a good version. I respect it a lot. Here's Popful Mail, another game localized by Working Designs, developed by Falcom. And Popful Mail is a game where you have 3 different characters that have different abilities and side-scrolling action with a touch of RPG involved, and some humorous characters and dialogue, which are quite amusing. And I like this game. I did beat it, and but there were some parts of it that were a little frustrating, and some bosses that I thought were a little too much. But still a very solid game, worth playing and memorable. Definitely some memorable scenes in this game, and Working Design's humor definitely added to that. We have Rise of the Dragon, which I believe is like a port of a PC game or something like that. This is kind of I want to say it's point and clicky or something along those lines. Yeah, it's got a story and clues and a mystery and stuff, and looks like a type of a game I would enjoy. I look forward to spending some time with it at some point. I have not yet. Here is Shining Force CD. This is a compilation of 2 of the Shining Force games on the Game Gear, I believe, along with, I think, like a bonus extra battle. And I have beaten this. Well, I don't think I've beaten like the secret extra battle, but I've beaten like the main games that were from the Game Gear. They're very good. If you like the Shining Force games on Genesis, you'll like this too. Less town exploration though, more just straight about the battles. I didn't think it was like the best Shining Force game ever, but definitely quality strategy RPG time. Now we have my favorite Sega CD game, and the main reason I have the console is Snatcher. This is a Hideo Kojima game of Metal Gear fame. Basically, you are a dude who has amnesia, and he's part of this special team to take down these robots that are invading the Earth covertly, called Snatchers. And some great story and suspense in this game, and cool plot twists, and really memorable. And there are some shooting sections in here that you can use to justify your gun or your controller for, but the main focus is the story and some solving puzzles too here and there. And the only real flaw with it is that there were some times where it really wasn't clear what to do next. But this is a fantastic game that I am very happy to have, and I plan to hold on to. Another iconic Sega CD game, we got Sonic CD. Now, Sonic CD is kind of famous because, well, one of the reasons that, I'm not saying it right, but basically Sonic CD has 2 different soundtracks, and a lot of people discuss which soundtrack is better, because the Japanese version and the European version have one soundtrack, and the US version has its own soundtrack, although it does borrow a few tracks from the original soundtrack. And I think they're both good. I think the original Japanese-European one is a little better, but US version is still very good. This is very different from the Genesis Sonic games. There's a time travel mechanic where you can go back in time and try to destroy this robot, and that'll make things easier for you going forward. And it's, I guess they try to make it give a little bit more exploration rather than just zoom to the exit. Although you can zoom to the exit if you want. People are divided on this game. I think it's quite good, but not the best Sonic game. But definitely worth owning, in my opinion. And we have the last Sega CD game I have is Vi, which is another Working Designs localized game. It's an RPG. I can't say too much about it other than that. But I do definitely plan to give that some time at some point to see what I think. And then we're going to finish off this episode with some Sega 32X, which was a ill-fated and, to put it mildly, not a very wise choice by Sega in the mid-90s. You could argue it might have been their biggest mistake that led to their downfall eventually, but we've got Slam City with Scottie Pippen for Sega CD 32X, so you need the Sega CD and the 32X connected to your Genesis in order to play this game. But basically this is like a cinematic basketball game, if that makes any sense, a one-on-one basketball game where you go against these dudes and you have to react to their moves in order to get the ball in the hoop. And there's a lot of cutscenes sprinkled in, that'll happen in between shots and stuff. And it's really goofy, and I like the humor. I don't have this for the gameplay. I have it just more that it's kind of a hilarious thing that exists. And then we have here, I'll just put that there. We have Knuckles Chaotix, which is the only Sonic game that came out for 32X. And this plays like the Sonic games, but with a weird twist, whereas you have another character that's literally bound to your character. You see they each hold a ring that's attached to with a character holding the other side, and there's no way to sever it. And there's different playable characters with different abilities, and really, I didn't think Chaotix was really all that good. I did beat it with a friend. Level design, to me, was pretty unremarkable and unmemorable. And also, Charmy the Bee, one of the playable characters, is super overpowered and just makes the game way too easy. Yeah, I'm not the biggest Knuckles Chaotix fan. I'm debating selling that one just because I just don't think it's very good, even though it is kind of the most famous 32X game. Now, we finish things off here with a few 32X cartridges. I do, by the way, have the Sega CD backup RAM card, although I'm not even sure if this works. I might have to like replace the battery in it or something, but this is basically to give you some more memory blocks to save your Sega CD games if you run out of space on the main console. And you basically need one of those to save all the possible data on Shining Force CD alone. So 3 cartridges here. We have Tempo, which is a platformer, and it's got some impressive graphics and some neat music and some really trippy levels and settings and stuff, and pretty memorable. Not like a classic, I would say, but I did beat it, and it was worth beating. A fun little game, and unique, and trippy, as I said. Very weird, very out there. We've got Virtua Fighter, which was, if not the first, it was one of the first 3D fighting games ever. It's kind of impressive that they were able to do this on the 32X, and probably a little dated now. These kind of 3D fighting games I've never really gotten into, but I do want to give it a chance just to see if I can like get a little taste of what was so endearing about it in the early 90s. And then finally we have World Series Baseball, starring Deion Sanders, who was actually better known for his football career rather than baseball. But anyway, this is one of the rarest games I own, period. It's a very rare 32X game. It is a little valuable, but not as valuable as it would be if it were like an actual really good game that everyone wanted to play. I mean, it is a good game. It's not like anything wrong with it, but it's a sports game. I mean, the sports games are from back then are kind of a dime a dozen. But yeah, in terms of just sheer rarity, this is one of the rarest games I own. Although I'm thinking of selling it because even though I like baseball, it's kind of not really that notable of a game, I guess. But yeah, that is my entire Sega CD, Sega CD, Sega 32X, and Sega Game Gear collections. And I don't think I'm forgetting anything. I've had to go like all around the room for this episode, but yeah, pretty sure that is it. And so thank you for joining me. Hope you enjoyed watching. Have a great rest of your day, and stay tuned because, oh boy, the big boy Super Nintendo, which is bound to be a multi-part episode, maybe several parts, Super Nintendo is coming up next.